Shalom and welcome to the Middle East Report. In this program today, we'll be discussing how one ministry is helping those who are in desperate need, not only in Israel, but also in the Ukraine. Warm welcome to the program, and today's special guest is all the way from the Netherlands. His name is Max Veenstra. He is the chairman of Israel Relief Aid. Max, warm welcome to the Middle East Report.
Thank you, Simon. Yeah.
I know that we also have a common friend as well in Jack van der Tang from the Out of Fire Ministry, so it's good to have you on the program.
Yeah, he actually is also a board member of our organization in Israel. So.
There you go, so that's good endorsement. And Max, can you just share with us how you came to faith in the Lord Jesus Christ, and how he's given you a love for Israel and the Jewish people, and how that you're really involved in huge logistics in helping the Jewish people with aid and really emergency supplies?
That's a lot of questions.
I know. Well, let's start with your testimony first then.
Okay. So actually, I'm born in a Christian family, Dutch Reformed. It's like a kind of Orthodox church in the Netherlands. And as a boy, or as a young man of about 26, 7 years old, I went to church every Sunday, 2 times, as it was used to be. And suddenly I went to a meeting, and the chairman read James, the book of James 2, and it says, "Beliefs without deeds is dead." So that struck me like it came in. So from that time on, I really had the desire to have living faith. And from there on, you start to search in the Bible what to do and how to manage. And I found the prayer of little Samuel. "Father, here I am. I'm your servant. Tell me, what can you do? What can I do for you?" And that's how it all started. And so then, after a few years later, in the late 80s, an American organization called Feed the Hungry came to me, and they had this big ship, and they said, "Max, we want to come to Amsterdam because we believe that Lord wants us to come there, and we want to send the ship to Albania with humanitarian aid. And we don't have any contacts in Holland. Can you help us out?" You need to know I'm from the shipping industry. I was a sales manager for different shipping corporations like Maersk Line and Hapag-Lloyd. And so I'm from the industry. That's why they came to me. And so the only thing is I had to quit my job to manage this ship. And so in 1993, the ship came to Amsterdam, and we managed to have many organizations who worked in Albania, get them together, and they filled the ship. So it took us 6 weeks to fill up the ship, and we had only one day off. It was the 4th of July, 1993, you know, the American Liberation Day, and my daughter was born on that day. So it's the only day off.
Wow.
So to make a long story short, the ship left to Albania. I never went to Albania, but you know, when the hatches closed, it was filled up like this. So the Lord provided a full ship of humanitarian aid, 150 truckloads.
Incredible. Yeah. And when did the Lord give you a real love for Israel and the Jewish people?
In 1995, I was asked to come to Eastern Europe for a business meeting, and there I came in contact with Messianic Jewish guys, And actually the business deal went off, but the contact stayed, and they said, Max, we need help from you. We are strong in Eastern Europe, but we don't have any contacts in the West. So can you help us out? And that's how it actually started. So then when you get involved in this Messianic network, they slowly take you in, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So can you share with us what you do for the Israel Relief Aid? And I mean, in terms of, I mean, you showed me pictures before we started this program on your phone of your huge warehouse in Amsterdam, providing critical aid and supplies to Israel.
Yeah. So Israel Relief Aid is established in 2012. So we're now 10 years old. And we have a really simple concept. We collect goods, both mainly new goods, but also used clothing. We put it in containers and ship it down to Israel, to the ports of Ashdod or to Haifa. And from there, containers are making a kind of tour through part of the country and being emptied at our aid stations. So we have about 48 stations in Israel, and so when the container comes in the morning, it is empty in the evening and goes back on the ship. So it saves us a lot of money because we don't need a warehouse, we don't need warehouse workers, and it's fast because immediately after it's being unloaded at the different aid stations, so it can be directly used for handing out to people in need.
And why is it so important as Christians that we bless Israel and the Jewish people, particularly those in Israel that are living below the poverty line? We're looking at possibly single mothers or even Holocaust survivors that find themselves in poverty because the price of living in Israel is extraordinarily high. We know the price of living around the world has gone up, but also particularly high in Israel, including the price of food as well.
Now, first of all, when you are a Christian and you want to be smart, just bless Israel. So that's simple, you know, because that's what it says in the Bible. If you bless Israel, you receive double blessing back. So that's number one. So so why should we bless Israel? It's because of Matthew 25. Jesus says, feed the hungry, clothe the naked. And he has some other commandments. So, and this is what we are called for. What you do to the least of us, you do to me, Jesus said. So, and what if we do this to his people? So that's why we want only to send the best what we get to Israel.
Amazing. So let's have a look at this video produced by Israel Relief Aid, and these are these huge containers that are arriving in the port of Haifa or Ashdod on the way to help the poor and needy in Israel.
Are bringing containers into Israel. This is our goal, to bring in as much humanitarian aid into Israel as is possible. There is a 35% poverty rate of children in Israel, and there are immigrants coming in from around the world, mostly from Ukraine right now. So this container is going to Ashdod and Haifa, into the north and the south of the country. So it's going to help a lot of people in both regions. And this first load is going to Ashdod in the southern region, to an aid center that distributes to mostly Ukrainian immigrants, and also giving to the poor and needy of all types, Holocaust survivors, single parent families, the unemployed, the disabled. So there's a real need in Israel, and our goal is to do just what we're doing today. And after this loads up, we'll be going up to Haifa and unloading the second half up in the north of the country, because the whole country needs this kind of aid. And in the north, it's going directly to Ukrainian immigrants.
עכשיו אני עובד קשה מאוד, אבל זה פשוט ברכה בשבילי, כי אני ככה יכול לשרת. זה לעזור לאנשים ולשרת את העם היהודי, כאילו, לשרת לאלוהים.
For over a decade, our management teams, both in Europe and in Israel, have been working in humanitarian aid. So we have logistics experience for many, many years. So we're using cost-effective methods without costly warehouses, and we're doing direct shipment, direct from the port, direct to the recipient organizations that will disperse the aid exactly to the places that are needed. So we are really making it so that our friends that are participating with us are giving directly for the aid and not to high running costs.
So there we have Israel Relief Aid in action. Max, can you just unpack for us how you decide who you give the aid to, how you get hold of this aid, whether it's kind of clothing or whether it's food packages or urgent medical supplies? How do you determine what some of these Israeli communities need and who actually gets and organises these aid supplies?
Yes, okay. Now, first of all, we get a lot of goods in our warehouse in Amsterdam, and not everything is fit to send to Israel. So that's also that's also the selection number one we have to make, because due to the customs requirements and regulations, we cannot send everything we like to Israel, because secondly, when it's about food or something like this, it has to be kosher. So for us, together with our local director, Joe Kaplan, we decide what we put in next container. So, and that's actually, at this moment it's mainly clothing, but I feel that in future it will also be again furnitures and this kind of items, because of the influx of the Ukrainian Jews.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And can you also share share what you can, but some of the miracles that you receive in terms of working with some kind of big clothing brands, sports manufacturers that end up donating lots of clothes to your organisation,
yes,
or lots of items that can be used.
Yeah, we receive from over 150 brands new goods. And sometimes it's a huge lot. I show you pictures. Yesterday we got 10 trucks coming in, only from one brand, and 10 trucks is a lot of pallets. It was over 250 pallets. So you can imagine in our warehouse it's always very busy, and we have always to work very hard to get it out. Because I always say we are not a museum, and we don't want to keep things. It has to go out to the field as soon as possible. So and from there on, we decide where we send goods. If we send goods to Israel or to other places in the world, because we got so much goods, you cannot imagine the quantities that we are able to bless the country of Israel, but we can also bless the other nations. So we don't have a tunnel vision. So thanks to Israel, we receive this enormous blessing, and we can also bless other countries.
And share what it's like for those that are receiving those aid packages, or new designer clothes, as it were, from you guys.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. You know, sometimes I'm over 30 years in this profession now, but still I get tears in my eyes when I read reports. You know, it really touches my heart.
And Max, can you share with us the challenge you faced during COVID-19 lockdown? Because we know that Israel went into, I think, about 4 lockdowns.
Yeah.
And Israel's COVID-19 restrictions were extremely tough. For example, that they could only leave the house about half an hour, could only walk literally only half a mile distance from their homes or their apartments. So life in Israel was extremely difficult during COVID-19. We know that, I think according to your website, that Israel's GDP decreased by 2.5%, which saw a massive rise in unemployment, and the need for Israelis then to have these desperate supplies. So how did you meet that challenge of supplying much needed and critical aid to Israel during the pandemic?
Yeah, we've still been able to send containers to Israel. First of all, our major problem in Holland, in the Netherlands, was the number of volunteers. So it dropped from, let's say, 60, 70 per week to only our own staff. And I don't know, but we managed to keep on sending goods to Israel. And also the same problem in Israel, because the distribution has, container has to be emptied by somebody. It doesn't walk it out by itself. So it was always exciting and to see that the plan always worked. So I don't know how, but we kept on shipping containers to Israel. But let's say it's to Hashem.
Yeah, let's have a look at some of the stuff that you actually sell. So this is according to your website. So you actually give, in terms of aid, quality clothing, furniture, household goods for new immigrants, mattresses and beds for IDF bases, together with hospital supplies for government hospitals, paramedics and clinics, baby supplies and clothing for organisations helping new mothers in poverty, furniture and beds for orphanages and youth offenders, plus also school supplies for those in play school, as well as schools for the disabled as well, plus also helping Holocaust survivors. So yeah, that's a lot of people, isn't it?
Yeah, you can tell. Yeah. So the thing is, when we start shipping containers, we also felt that it's not enough to only send goods from abroad. So next to shipping containers to Israel, we also have monthly projects. So on each monthly project, we do funding for that particular project, and then we buy locally. So most of the projects you mentioned, goods are bought in Israel itself.
And how does the Israeli government respond? Because I know that you probably end up working with the likes of the Jewish Agency regarding the New Orleans or the new immigrants coming into the country, and various other Israeli NGOs that are helping those below the poverty line.
Yeah, we work only with local, let's say, local outlets. We call them aid stations. And we don't have too many contacts with authorities, as far as I know.
Yeah, and so what is the response? How do you identify, let's take it, for example, Holocaust survivors? You're providing these big aid packages to Holocaust survivors in Israel. How do you identify who the Holocaust survivors are? How do you identify where the need is to ensure they get what they need or what they require?
Yeah. Now, our local director is already for many years into humanitarian aid. So before we started with Israel Relief Aid, our director, Joe Kaplan, was almost 14 years already in the business. So she has a huge network of people who are reaching out to the poor and needy.
Yeah. And how do they respond knowing that this is actually supplied or being supplied by Messianic believers in Israel?
That's a difficult question, and so we don't advocate it too much.
But you do on your website, though, don't you?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Which is important, because that's the dynamics that things actually work through. To work with Messianic believers that can be a blessing to their fellow country men and women by providing with this aid and this humanitarian aid. So really, what you're really showing, aren't you, is is practical love in action.
Correct. Yeah, and you know, from the bottom and not from the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, we like to work in a kind of silent, and just provide local congregations with aid, so they can do the two sides of the medal. You know, Matthew 28 and Matthew 25. So that's what it's about.
And how do people, Christians as well, that love Israel, that want to help provide that kind of humanitarian support, particularly for those that are less well off in Israel, including Holocaust survivors, single mothers and the like, getting involved in such work to ensure that they're actually helping Israelis?
Yeah. Now we are in UK. We are closely connected to Shekinah Legacy, and the chairman of Shekinah Legacy is also on our board.
Yeah, which is helpful.
And that's in same we have in United States. We do a lot of things. So we have an international board. It's not only from Israel and from the Netherlands, but also from Germany, Austria, United States, and UK.
So according to my notes here, it says that each aid container donated goods costs around $9,000 to be shipped, maybe more now because of the international crisis. It's cleared through customs and then distributed towards Israel, and each container contains 20 or 30 times that amount in terms of aid.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so the cost is not only the cost of shipping, but it's also the cost in Israel itself for distribution, and also customs clearance. And actually, the ports in Israel, they also are quite costly.
And can you share the challenges then of actually getting these containers packed, say from your warehouse in Amsterdam to Haifa or Ashdod, knowing that according to this one, they contain about 10 tons of aid, getting them to Israel and then distributing them to your various centers across the country.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do. And so together with our director, I know to which centers the container will go before we load the container in Amsterdam. So then we make sections. So each aid station receives a part of the container.
And
so also important is preparations of customs documents.
Yes.
So the customs documents have to be ready even before ship arrives in Ashdod, to have a swift passage. Because if container stays in port for a few days, we pay a kind of demurrage cost, which is pretty high in Israel. So we have to have everything well in order before we ship container.
And where does the aid come from? I know that you've said before that companies donate aid, but is there also money that is raised from Christian communities throughout Europe that help to equip and pay for these aid packages?
Yes, it's fundraising. Actually, Jack in the Netherlands, his organization Pillar of Fire, is acting on behalf of Israel Relief Aid in the Netherlands, like Shekinah Legacy is here in UK. So the organizations, they collect money, and also in Netherlands, Jack's organization is really busy with packing clothing parcels for the containers.
It's good. Yeah. It's good to see you keeping Jack busy.
Yeah, and of course, he likes to work.
And Max, can you kind of share some of these quite amazing stories? I mean, you can't go into details, I know, regarding this, but to actually supply kind of football kits to children as well, either in Israel or in Iraq or other places. So what does it mean for these children then to have the latest football kits belonging to some of the big clubs in Europe?
Actually, they're amazed. You know, this is such a blessing for them. And also it gives, because our one of our jobs is to give people hope. So, and that suddenly a truck comes from Holland with all new stuff, and it opens up and you see this football kits, you know, and it's like a big party, you know. It's like a Purim and Hanukkah at the same time, you know.
And how much prayer goes into this work? Because clearly what you're facing in this work is a lot of divine appointments, incredible amounts of generosity by some of these kind of big brands and sports brands that are giving some of these football kits and what have you to children and to others. So how much of what you do is prayer focused with a real heart for showing that kind of outworking of practical love?
Now, prayer is the engine of our work. So I don't know how many people, but there's lots of people all over the world praying for us. So, and that's really an encouragement.
So share with us some miracles that you've seen doing this work for over 30 years.
Share a miracle?
Yeah. You've already have loads.
Yeah, okay. Once we received money to buy trucks and so with that money I could buy 7 trucks. And so, and we decided that the trucks have to go to Ukraine. I talk about, let's say, 20 years ago. And so the truck was sitting in Amsterdam, and I didn't have any cargo. So, and the drivers were already coming over from Ukraine to pick up the trucks, but empty. And I didn't know what to do. The only solution was prayer. And I know exactly where it was. On the highway, I prayed with my eyes open. And then God told me, call this businessman. And I called the businessman and I said, I need food. And he said, this is a miracle. He said, because like I just told my wife that we have this tons of food still in our warehouse and we have to get rid of it. So he just called me at the right time. So this is one of the many examples we have, I have experienced, and actually up till today, I see many miracles, you know. It's amazing.
Max, can you share with us how your organisation or what you're doing is helping the Jewish people in the Ukraine? Because obviously that is an extremely difficult and precarious situation.
Yeah. Okay, we are involved in humanitarian aid to Ukraine since 1997. So it's for 25 years. So we sent many trucks to Ukraine. So we have an extensive network of people over there. So when the crisis happened, it was just activate the network, and we sent almost daily trucks into Ukraine now. So tomorrow we will load 2 trucks, one to the area of Lvov, which is close to the Polish border, and the other one will go to Tarnopol, which is even between Kiev and Luhansk. Amazing. It's in the east part, yeah. So but next to sending aid to these to Ukraine, we also send aid to Poland. So we have a hub in East Poland and West Poland. We have hubs in Moldova, in Romania, and Hungary. So we every day trucks are leaving our warehouse to provide aid to these groups. And actually, just when I came here, I received a call that there is about 200 Jewish people coming to Vienna. And if we can send aid to new clothing to them, just because they arrive with nothing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Extraordinary. So let's have a look at this CBN news item entitled How Israel is Preparing Plans to Help Jews Fleeing the Ukraine. That's before the conflict started, and together with Ukraine's Jewish community on the edge of fears of a Soviet-era persecution re-emerge.
On Sunday, Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett called on Israelis in Ukraine to leave. I am calling again upon Israelis in Ukraine, come home. Don't take unnecessary risks. Don't wait for a situation where you really want to come back, but it will be impossible. Be responsible for yourselves, leave Ukraine as quickly as possible, and come home. But Israel is concerned not only for its citizens, but also for the tens of thousands of other Jews in Ukraine. Former Israeli ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, is involved in that effort.
So I have been in touch with the leadership of the Jewish communities in Ukraine. They are confused about their future. We told them the gates of Israel are always open for every Jew to come.
But Danon says even in the face of an invasion, it's a difficult decision.
But you know, it's not easy to relocate your family when you have a connection to your community, a job, elderly parents. It's not easy for them to come and just pack their things and move to Israel.
Yael Eckstein, head of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, just spent time on the ground in Ukraine.
I felt all of the unknown of what will be in the future there. But what was very clear to me is that there's a thriving and strong Jewish community in Ukraine that isn't going anywhere so quickly.
In February 2020, CBN News accompanied 130 Ukrainian Jews who made Aliyah to Israel. Even now, the work goes on.
Continuing our operations, rain or shine, no matter what's going on. And there are those who have always dreamed about making Aliyah and are jumping on this time now to move to Israel.
The state of Israel has a long history of rescuing Jews during dangerous times. With well over 100,000 Russian troops on the border of Ukraine, the Jews in Ukraine may seek Israel's experience in their hour of need. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
What's your dream here for this place?
To restore it will be a sign that whatever enemies could do to destroy humanity is not possible to kill. How you know that
Melach Sheket's office sits next to what was once Ukraine's oldest synagogue. For 359 years, it stood as a symbol of a thriving religious community. Then came 1941, which brought Nazi bombings, followed by the massacre of 1.5 million Ukrainian Jews. Now, 81 years later, Sheket, a prominent Jewish leader here, sees dark clouds gathering once again with Russia's invasion.
Most important that the people would follow the Almighty's commitments. And if they will do it, then peace will prevail.
Putin's obsession to retake Ukraine could erase the way of life many here have fought for since independence 31 years ago.
It seems like he wants to create a new USSR. That means that we all need to be afraid. That's scary.
Sheket says Ukrainian Jews also suffered during that reign as communist leaders tried to snuff out their religion. He worries it could happen again with a complete Russian takeover.
Especially Jews, they had a second Holocaust, spiritual Holocaust in the Soviet time. It was a horrible totalitarian system.
With tens of thousands of people on the run from Kyiv and other cities, Rabbi Mordecai Shlomo Bald, leader of Lviv's largest synagogue, is ready to receive them. He wants his congregation to be a blessing to those in their hour of need.
Please use me. Use me not to be a bone in somebody's throat, but use me to be beneficial, to make it pleasant, to make it better, to make it easier for people around.
George Thomas, CBN News, Lviv.
And we all know that the desperate situation that not only Ukrainians are in, but also the Ukrainian Jewish community caught up in this horrendous war in the Ukraine. I have to ask you, Max, because of the experience that you have faced in sending aid supplies to the Ukraine, do you feel that God has kind of prepared you and those who you work with for this crisis in particular, so that you are prepared, you know what you're doing? Because we know that so many people want to help the poor Ukrainians, and so many Christians want to help the remaining Jews of the Ukraine, including getting out something like 75 Holocaust survivors from the Ukraine so they don't die in this conflict, to give them that urgent aid that they're looking for, particularly as many as you, like you say, just left Ukraine with only their hand luggage.
Yeah, about 8 to 9 months ago, I called my board members and I told them, I have the feeling that we have to prepare ourselves for something in Ukraine. I didn't know what, and I told them we have to prepare for mass Aliyah. but it's not only the Aliyah, it's now also the war, what's happened. So, but I think Holy Spirit led me already to prepare, let's say 9 months ago. So just to refresh and to look at our network, how can we be as effective as possible? But you can prepare like what you want, but when the situation is there, it's totally chaos.
So can you describe what you see then? So what would your drivers see if they were driving to Poland or even driving to Lviv in Ukraine, knowing that Ukraine is under fire? I mean, how do you prepare your drivers to deliver this aid, knowing that they're potentially going into a war situation?
Now, actually, we use commercial drivers, so we don't use volunteers. I don't want to send any volunteer to a war zone. So we use commercial drivers, and they will go to our hubs, which we prepared. So our main hub in Ukraine is close to Lviv. So humanitarian aid goes there and is being distributed from there into the various places. So actually we service about 250 villages and cities. And so the distribution is very simple. Minivans come with people from the cities to bring them to the border and bring back humanitarian aid from our hub back to their own cities. So it's a simple system.
Absolutely. And how many trucks are we talking about? I mean, you're a man of logistics, so share for our viewers, unpack for our viewers the logistical challenge involved in all of this.
Now, first of all, when the war started, it was complete chaos, so nobody knew what to do, and so we had to really see what happened. So we immediately started to send trucks to Poland, and 2 weeks later we also were able to send trucks directly into Ukraine, and that's what we still keep on doing. And so we look at two. We have two main pillars of work. So it's the people inside Ukraine, and then mainly the communities we help, and people who left Ukraine in Poland, but also in Moldova, Romania, and Bulgaria. So that's so we keep on sending trucks every day, and I can send trucks as much as I like, but I can't empty the warehouse. When you go to my warehouse now, it's completely packed. So we're working like crazy. It's like a tsunami of new goods coming to our warehouse. So it's amazing. It's if you talk about a miracle, for me that's a miracle, because I thought after a few weeks it will be over. No more goods will come in, but it's more and more is coming. So we work like crazy to get the warehouse empty, but it's impossible.
And Max, it must be an absolute joy to knowing that the more you give out, the more you receive. So the more that your warehouse is kind of packed, the more you're giving out, particularly to those Ukrainians in a desperate situation, the more that's flooding into your warehouse. I mean, isn't that an encouraging sign that God is blessing the work and the ministry you're involved in?
Yes, definitely. And because it's not only the goods coming in, but also God sends a lot of volunteers. Funding is available, so everything is in place, and so the network is running like crazy to help as many as people as we can. And so it's amazing, we're in the center of a miracle.
And what's your role in all of this? Can you just share for our viewers what your role is in this? Obviously, you're praying, and you're praying with Jack and other supporters around the world, but share with us your particular role in helping to get this urgent humanitarian need to the Ukrainians and also to the Ukrainian Jewish community as well.
Yeah, actually, my role is I'm a logistic animal. So everything has to do with logistics. So it's just a matter of planning. And contacts. So, and that's one of the only advantages to become old, that your number of contacts are growing. Yeah, so we have many contacts all over the world, and so because we don't only receive aid from the Netherlands, but even we ship containers from Hong Kong, from the United States via Amsterdam to the projects.
So what does that involve, though? Does that mean you're phoning up a company and say, if you've got any unwanted supplies that you can give to the poor people of the Ukraine, and then do you have to then phone up a distribution centre to get this sent to your warehouse, and then lorries that you can contact and drivers that can drive it, and then people who are actually working on the ground to actually distribute the aid?
Yeah, so first of all, we hardly contact companies because companies find us. So that's also amazing. That you get phone calls from companies and say, okay, we want to donate this and this quantity. So this is already a miracle. So we have, what maybe I told before, we have over 150 brands supporting our activities. Not only last month, but also before. Only the number of the quantity is growing. So transportation, up till now, most of the transportation was provided for free. So that's also something, I call it like a God's economy, because we can raise, let's say 5-6 million and spend it. But maybe that's God choose me. I'm Dutch, we don't like to spend money, only Jack's money. But so the thing is, we hardly use money. It's in contradiction because you think we need a lot of money. Of course, we need money for buying food locally. So that's actually the main problem. When you ask me what's the problem for today, is the food security situation for people in Ukraine. So now we started to buy food locally to support, but you also send in still food from other places.
That's good. Now, according to notes put out on the Shekinah Legacy, as one of your main kind of UK supporters, said here that in the last 24 hours, Shekinah Legacy has received details from yourself, have been able to make an agreement with the Ukrainian embassies in Warsaw and in The Hague to provide free transport and customs clearance for refugees coming into Poland and making their way to these help centres that you produced, as well as the support hubs in Poland. So not only are you actually helping with distribute much needed urgent supplies of aid, but also helping refugees as well. Share with us how you're able to do that.
Yeah, so when I bring it down to one person, we provide clothing parcels in the Netherlands for refugees. So up till today, we built over 500 parcels already. And it's clothing parcels with only new clothing. So, new shoes, new trousers, new shirts, new everything, underwear, socks. So a clothing parcel has a street value of about 700 to 800 euros. So everything is brand new. And that's what we do. So that's how we help refugees. But secondly, we help also refugees to make Aliyah.
Which is really interesting, because that ties in the whole fulfillment of Bible prophecy. So share with us how you're able to help and assist Jewish people making Aliyah to Israel.
As I told you, that buses come, the minibuses come from all these places to our center in Lvov, and from there the team brings people over to the over the border into Poland, and from there people go on plane and make Aliyah.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
And how does that make you feel, that you are helping other people and you're helping other countries, but you're also helping Israel and the Jewish people? Yeah. How much does that kind of give you that kind of real peace and satisfaction, knowing that you're actually helping the Jewish people make Aliyah in fulfillment of Bible prophecy?
It's about the question, why am I born? So what's the reason why I'm here? So that's the question. So and when you are involved in something like this, I'm born for a time like this. So, and how does it feel? You know, it could give a lot of stress what we're doing, but you know, I'm quite calm because I feel that things come together. It's like Paul says, do the things God prepared for you.
Absolutely. So let's have a look at this CBN news item that looks at how Ukrainian Jewish people are making Aliyah to Israel in the midst of this crisis in the Ukraine.
Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett and his wife welcomed around 100 Ukrainian Jewish orphans who arrived Sunday. The children, aged 2 to 18, are part of what's dubbed Operation Israeli Guarantee, a promise to help Jews fleeing the fighting. 2 more flights of Ukrainian Jews followed. This flight from Warsaw, Poland is carrying more than 100 immigrants. This is the first round of flights expected to bring thousands of new immigrants from Ukraine in the coming weeks and months.
Efforts are ongoing in order to bring as many people as possible to save lives and to first get them out of harm's way and then to take care of everything that needs to happen after that.
Sam Grunberg of Israeli fundraiser Karen Hayesod feels a personal connection to the effort.
As somebody who also made Aliyah myself, it's unbelievable to see what it means to be part of the Jewish nation after thousands of years, to see the solidarity, to see the unity at the darkest moments when we shine brightest, and that's really what we're seeing today.
The arrival of new immigrants is usually a festive celebration, although this homecoming is bittersweet.
Bad feeling. We have a mom. My husband is in Ukraine. We are okay, but thank you very much for that I and my daughter can be here. And we will wait for good news.
CBN News spoke to 3 women who arrived with their children, but without their husbands.
We have moved from Kyiv a week ago, and we were in Khmelnytska Oblast, but now there are a lot of bombing, and my husband is returning there to help people.
How do you feel right now?
I'm happy that you support us, but I worry about my husband.
Men between the ages of 18 to 60 are not allowed to leave Ukraine because they are being called on to join the army. Olga says the Ukrainian people won't give up.
It's dangerous, it is scared, but people, they are not afraid and they are ready to struggle to the end, to the victory. Not to agree to Putin's demands, but to our victory and to get these Russians from our country.
Yael Eckstein, president of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, says people arrive with almost no possessions.
I saw so many people landing, coming down those stairs with tears in their eyes, crying. And I've seen that look before, but usually it's tears of happiness, that they're so happy to get home. These are tears of confusion, of pain, of unknown.
For now, there is a lot of uncertainty. Israel has mounted massive rescue operations in the past, and this could prove to be another time when Israel shines as a light to the nations.
And it's incredible to see those Jewish people from the Ukraine coming home to Israel in safety. We also need to pray for their husbands still caught up in that conflict, that God would protect them and also bring them home to Israel. Max, when you see that excellent video, a news report put out there by CBN that shows these Jewish people from the Ukraine making Aliyah and escaping this conflict, knowing that you are playing your part in helping them, how satisfying is that in the work that you do?
I wouldn't say satisfying, because when I saw this video, I cry. It's for me very emotional.
Absolutely,
yeah.
But the work you're involved in is literally kind of saving people's lives, and giving them clothes and urgent aid. I mean, there's not many people that do what you do, that are able to make a massive difference in thousands of people's lives, particularly Jewish people's lives that have been scarred by anti-Semitism or fear, and then to provide that comfort and that support and even helping Jewish people make Aliyah is something very special to behold.
Yeah, but you know, for me, emotion is very important. So when I see this video, you know, my heart cries, and I still know, okay, this is what I have to do. And so it makes me also feel proud to be part of it. But I need this kind of videos to stay motivated.
Good, because we can give you some more.
No, don't do
and,
it. You get me crying.
Max, our viewers watching today's program that have been asking, how can I help support the Jewish people from Ukraine caught up in this awful war that we're seeing, and all the carnage that has unfolded, and all the misery and the worst of humanity, but also brings out the best in humanity. We see that God's provision through organisations and ministries like your own been able to make a massive difference and to help those that are in need. How can our viewers get involved and support the work that you're doing?
Actually, the main thing is prayer. So that's actually what we need. And pray that God will do more miracles, and that He will use, but He will also use me, but also other people and other organizations. Because it's not about me, because we are only a small part of His work, you know. So we need prayer. And from there, it will start. It will touch people's heart. Maybe people who pray, but it will also, God will also touch hearts of businessmen who are not believers. I experienced myself. So the only thing we need is prayer, that God will open hearts.
And God does the rest, right?
Yeah. This is more simple, you know, otherwise you get tired.
No, I can imagine. I can imagine that. Yeah. So if you see a crisis like Ukraine or another crisis happen in Europe or elsewhere around the world, do you just then respond to that crisis and that need?
Yeah, it depends on our logistic capacity. Yeah. So especially when in Europe something happens, we are able to reach it in a few days. And you know, last few years we sent a lot of loads into Iraq, especially to northern Iraq, to Erbil, and where we sent enormous quantities of loads to there, but also to the neighbors, you know, Jordan, Lebanon, because we also have to take good care of the neighbors.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what responses have you got from, say, government officials in these countries that you've been working with, and including response from the Israeli government?
Let's say we hardly get in contact with governments because governments change.
Yeah.
So you know, who tells who's in power next week? So we prefer to work via churches, etc.
And how
they stay? Yeah.
And how do the churches respond to all this aid and distribution?
It's amazing. Yeah, they are in a way sometimes confused when we send a truck. Yeah, that's about the quantity and the quality of the goods inside. You know, sometimes trucks we send these days have a value for over $1 million a truck. You know, so that's so you can imagine that you know, people can't believe their eyes.
So nice to be involved in this kind of works, Max, particularly with your big kind of warehouse. So clearly you're going to need a bigger warehouse sometime soon, aren't you? If our viewers start praying for you a lot more and other people start praying.
Yeah, actually we need a more sophisticated warehouse. That's an urgent need. But you know, God will provide. So we have to deal with the tools He gave us today. So,
absolutely.
And if He wants to improve our tools, I don't mind. But if not, we will keep on doing what we do.
Max, I just want to thank you so much for being my guest on the Middle East Report today. I just want to thank you so much for coming to share what that you're doing, not only working with Israelis living under the poverty line, Holocaust survivors, helping hospitals, helping the IDF, and also those mothers in need as well, but also helping the situation in the Ukraine, particularly with the Jewish people making Aliyah as well. So, kol hakavod, and thank you for the work you're doing.
Okay, thank you.
And I just want to thank you for watching this program today. Clearly our hearts go out to the Ukrainian people, to the Jewish people caught up in this crisis in the Ukraine, and how much they need our prayers and support. Well, you can do that by supporting the work of Israel Relief Aid, are making a huge difference, not only in helping the Jewish people make Aliyah to Israel and providing them with that humanitarian aid, but also to provide comfort to those who are caught up as refugees across Europe as they flee the terror and fear that's happening in their country, which is Ukraine. So thank you for watching today's Middle East Report.